Welcome to the Sharing Passion and Purpose podcast, a weekly podcast providing career and creative inspiration to help you build a purpose-filled life. If you're interested in tapping into your creative potential, pursuing a career with passion, and building on your biggest and best resource, yourself, please join me on this path. I'm your host, Nancy Moore, and I want you to know that I'm on this journey with you. So let's get started. Hi, everybody. Happy September. I love the fall. And for us in Oklahoma, September is ushering in that fall weather. It's still pretty warm, but I can tell that sweater weather and pumpkin spice lattes and fall tailgates and all of that are just around the corner. And September also is National Childhood Obesity Awareness Month. And so this week I am talking with Stephanie Harris. And Stephanie is registered and licensed dietitian with over 12 years experience. So she is seasoned in her field. And we have a great conversation about several things. One is the versatility in her career and the different options that she has and what she enjoys specifically about her job because she's very passionate about her career. We talk about why weight isn't wellness and it's important to feel good in your life. And we also talk about getting into a routine of rest and why that's important to do, and it also helps with stress management. So Stephanie shares a great perspective in all of these areas, and so I'm really excited to welcome to the show Stephanie Harris. Hi, everybody. I am so happy to welcome Stephanie Harris to the podcast. It is September, and so we are going to be talking about her occupation as a registered dietitian, but in September, we are also recognizing National Childhood Obesity Month. And so Stephanie is somebody that I interviewed for Tulsa Kids Magazine. She is very knowledgeable in her field, in the field of nutrition, and I should have been recording prior to starting now because we just had a great conversation, but I know there's more to come. But welcome, Stephanie, to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here with you.
Yeah, this will be fun.
I'm really excited.
Good. It'll be fun to talk about all this. So if you could just kind of share with people a little about yourself so people can get to know you, and then we'll kind of get into your career.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a Tulsa native, born and raised here. I am married with two young boys. So that is my life's work, and I'm very proud of, first and foremost. I have the joy of being a mother. So in addition, I get to also meet with clients. I work part-time with a wonderful group of dietitians. We are in a private practice here in Tulsa, Nutrition Consultants of Tulsa. And I get to share my passion with them. And it's really exciting because we can have a sit down and I get to follow up with them and get to know folks. And I see clients of all ages. And so it's really a special thing that I look forward to as part of my day. And everyone has different and unique wellness goals and challenges. And so it really is different every day. And I think that's what keeps me excited because there is no one size fits all plan that works for people. And so really targeted nutrition plans are at the forefront of getting to know a person and what drives their eating behaviors, essentially.
Well, okay, so let's talk about that because I said that you're a registered dietitian. Yeah. You are different than the types of people that I have interviewed in the past because you have a place where you go and you're not the entrepreneur that started the company, but you do work there and you're an important part of that Nutrition Consultants of Tulsa. And so I'll include that information about Stephanie so you're able to reach out to her, as you have questions and that kind of thing. But how did you decide to pursue nutrition as a career?
That's a great question. First I grew up just really enjoying cooking.
Okay.
You know, my mom was really passionate about cooking meals at home, and it was always a joke too. My brother would come in the kitchen, go, "There's nothing to eat," but the pantries were full of food, but it was something that you had to make.
That sounds familiar,
right?
To be honest.
So, you know, that was kind of the heart of our household, and then watching my dad, who is a physician, be able to help people and heal, and I had exposure to the medical field from him. And so I was in high school, and part of our curriculum as a junior was to actually do a career exploration. And so I had decided, you know, I can't exactly even remember the conversation, but I remember thinking, hey, there's this healthy lifestyles program that would be kind of interesting to get. They obviously are helping people, and I thought, I really want to, that looks interesting, you know? And so I had no idea really what I was getting myself into, but I did about a month there where you go and you career explore. And that's really where I had my first exposure to a dietitian, and kind of this hybrid of medical nutrition therapy. There's a medical component of learning about food, and also how that interacts with our body. And then in the background, I was always kind of considering a career in health. And when I saw those two things married together, I was hooked.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the things I got to do during that time was to, you know, teach a heart healthy class to some folks that were working on modifying their diet, but also the fun side of creating a recipe and going on, you know, a local news station here and getting to demo that. And there was just, I looked at this and I thought, there's so much job versatility here. I remember thinking, there's really a job anywhere that you could do. You could work in a hospital setting, you could work outpatient, schools, community, and there's also the big component of food service. I mean, a lot of the menu development for institutions comes from dietitians, you know, and so forth. So in terms of a platform, I was trying to think, you know, if I was going to do something and I kind of was getting tired of the mundane day to day, I could easily pivot while still in my field and do something completely different. And so that really drew me as well, that versatility of kind of having lots of career options within one major and within one, you know, degree.
That's really neat. So you, though, have gone on to where you have your master's degree.
Yes.
So if you will explain to people the difference between, because you mentioned a dietitian, but you're a registered dietitian, but there's a nutritionist. There's a lot of different things. So if you could kind of shed some light onto that.
Yeah, that's such a great question too, because even our title, Registered Dietitian Nutritionist, RDN, is our full credential. And there's really distinct differences in education and also legal credentialing. So you have to participate in a certified through our nutrition board program, and do also so many hours of externship, you know, real world experience, and then you sit for a boards exam, just like, you know, a physician or, you know, another healthcare you know, job or role. You have a national registration exam that you have to pass, kind of like our boards, and then you have to apply for your licensure in each state, just like the doctor. So you'll see RD, which stands for Registered Dietitian, so it's a national thing, but I'm licensed LD. I'm a licensed dietitian, meaning I've met all of the background checks and legal credentialing and all of that kind of things that go into providing care. So a nutritionist doesn't really have any real definitions, if you will. And there's a lot of variety and certificates and things like that, online classes for maybe nutritionists, or somebody could just write a neat book on a diet, and that they kind of use that word very loosely. But when you are looking for a provider, if you will, that insurance will reimburse, you'll really want to go to the medical, you know, basically certification of a registered and licensed dietitian. We are a provider. We have MPI numbers, national provider identifiers, just like any other provider would. So it's really, you're getting more, I think, medical evidence-based.
I always like that.
It's truly built around a core curriculum around research, around nutritional research. And then we have to maintain that registration by doing continuing education, because as we know, nutrition is an evolution it's not stagnant. We are literally learning new things on the daily. And so part of our continuing education is about 75 hours of continuing ed every 5 years to maintain that licensure. So I can't just hang my hat on what I learned, 15 years ago. I have to stay current and keep up with the latest and greatest research.
Well, I'm glad that you're saying that, because we talked earlier about you not wanting to maybe use the word diet. And that was a buzzword many years ago. You're going on a diet. And so you more like to focus on the overall wellness of the person. And I feel like it's more of an overall holistic approach. And so if you'll talk about that and your focus and maybe not liking the word diet.
Well,
is that okay?
It's not even the poor word diet. It's not even the word. I think it's the meaning. When we've used it so much. When I say I'm on a diet, we're immediately thinking restriction, or we're immediately thinking something other than just a regular normal intake. Back to kind of what you were saying about words that are triggering. I mean, how we use them and how we're talking about them is really, we're talking more nutritional counseling, if you will, and not necessarily actual food. And so I always kind of use this analogy. When you're looking at your intake, is also the other kind exchange for diet. When you're looking at your dietary intake, what drives those choices? Yes, 25% I would say is actual food, like your food preferences, maybe your food knowledge about what foods are, but majority of us don't make decisions based on that. 75% is more psychological. How do we know we're hungry? What are those threads that we maybe grew up with, or those meal mantras our parents used to say, or clean your plate, or what are all those threads that are going into that, making us have an influence on our behaviors, our thoughts, and our feelings around food choices. And that's really the difference, I would say, between going on a diet, which is kind of a one note, to me, a very like 2D dimensional look at just what you eat, versus, okay, how did we get to that choice? And that's really where, once you kind of push the pause button and say, okay, what led up to that? That's really where the conversation becomes more about behavior and habits, and kind of looking at all of those things that tend to honestly go back to, I have a lot of clients share, well, when I was a kid, this is what we did. Or when I was living here, this was the only thing around. So it's kind of an interesting conversation. That's why it's so unique. It goes back to your culture. It goes back to your home, the people, your friends, your family that probably had influences unconsciously.
Mealtime is for me, such like a community building experience. You get together, people meet for dinner. I try to sit down with my family every night and have dinner. And of course, this is all circling around food. Yeah. But that can be a hard topic, the whole food and how much people are eating or what they're eating and that kind of thing. I thought I want to call to attention to the National Childhood Obesity Awareness Month and have you kind of speak to that, because as a parent, I've had conversations with people and it's just a hard topic to talk to kids about. But also if your child is bringing something up, whether they're telling you they want to lose weight, I thought if you could kind of coach us a little bit on maybe what to say or the steps to take, especially if your child, is reaching out to you as a parent.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I feel like first and foremost, always being a good and approachable listener, I think, is the first thing we can do for our kids, is give them our gift of time, even if we don't have the answers. So I think even if you don't have all the knowledge or all the right answers, know that just your time investment and sitting down and just listening is the first step. And I think being sensitive to the subject, especially when it comes to children's and teens, just because there's a lot of emotion too sometimes around that they're still figuring out what that is and how to regulate it and how to communicate it, to be honest. So sometimes they'll come to you and talk and you're kind of like, no, what is this about? What are you talking about? And really just, I call it motivational interviewing, if you will. If you can just almost repeat back to them what they said, that's validating that they were heard. So even if you have no clue how to respond or what is the right thing to do, sometimes just saying, hey, I'm so glad you're sharing this and thank you. And what I'm hearing you say is, And just even validating that they're heard, I think is really key. But overall, we have to keep the big picture in mind. I know often, maybe young girls would be coming and they're maybe talking about their weight or their body image. And there's a lot out there that we have to recognize that they're up against that honestly I didn't have to deal with as a young teen. I didn't have social media. Yes, to say there was still diet culture.
Right. Yeah.
Diet culture was still on magazines and commercials and TV shows, but it's just way more abundant. It's very loud. And you've got people on TikTok suggesting this and that. And so the content is heavy. You shouldn't be surprised if they're coming to you. It doesn't mean there's an issue, but honestly, they're just probably processing truth from non-truth. Hey, I saw this and this topic, and this was the topic at lunch today. Saw this online. But I think we also have to be really mindful of the conversations we have in front of them, even about ourselves and our bodies. Because if we're even mindlessly going, gosh, I need to go work out, instead of, gosh, I get to go move my body today, even though we didn't say anything, there's an undertone, there's a message there about what we're trying to say about our bodies and caring for it versus I have to because I have to look a certain way or I'm trying to change the way my body looks versus I'm going to see what my body can do. Like I'm going to go and get to exercise and I get the gift of movement today. So I think the other thing to consider is what are we saying, doing that we ourselves are telling ourselves about our body image, because inevitably that is influential to your audience, whether you think it's not, it is. But I also think, when you're talking about your child and whatever issues, food, body image, you have to remember that weight isn't wellness. And I think that's something that you can kind of explore. If they are concerned about their weight, is it more of a body image concern, a confidence, a low self-esteem topic? Or are we talking about you not feeling good and you don't have energy and, how do we better take care of ourselves? And that's your point about it being more of a holistic thing, because it's not just about diet. It's about, are we getting enough rest? I notice as a culture, we do a lot in our routines of getting out the door. We're real purposeful with our wake up routine and our coffee and this and that to be productive. But when it comes to rest, it's like, I'll just fall asleep. There's no routine, and it works great for young children. It also works great for adults. How do we unplug? How do we decompress? How do we naturally help ourselves and our body purposely rest? And I think that's also important. But also that kind of feeds into stress management. What keeps us up at night? How are we giving ourselves those outlets? Because all of those things, beyond just giving ourselves the gift of physical activity and movement, we're not going to feel up for doing that if we got a really poor night's sleep. If that basic need wasn't met, we're not going to be the best versions of ourselves, the most motivated versions of ourselves. We're kind of operating in survival, if you will, because a basic need wasn't met. So sometimes it's going back and looking at the foundation, because it's a domino. If I got I've had a stressful day, kept me up, I didn't have a good night's sleep, that's kind of setting the tone for maybe not the most optimal decision making for the next day. And yes, dietary choices are a part of that. And that's the kind of conversation sometimes that when you talk about, well, what's really going on in your lifestyle? When we say lifestyle changes, we're not just talking about diet. We're talking about the whole beach ball, because you can't have one without the other, and one will impact the other. And so I think the conversation needs to extend beyond weight and really look at wellness. I always like to use this word instead of love, like cherish your body. We don't have to love the look, but cherishing, and they use it, if you ever go to a wedding, do you love and cherish that person? They're two separate words. And cherish really kind of talks about protecting and caretaking. And I think that's the conversation that's better than talking about, do we love the way we look, or are we cherishing our body? And how do we cherish it? Well, we brush our teeth. Basic hygiene. We're giving ourselves opportunities throughout the day to see friends and bring joy to our life, and part of that is fueling. So I think sometimes what we eat isn't the start, it's the symptom of kind of everything else going on in that person's life. And that's really where nutritional counseling kind of helps, identify potentially those other triggers and factors involved. And we're not counselors, that's a specialty that honestly we partner with a lot, because a lot of times when we identify this, we say, wow, okay, take a look at that. That's really influencing your food choices. Maybe you should talk to somebody about a different way we want to manage that. You know?
You described yourself earlier again before I started recording as a coach. And so as a coach, I think you've given some really great things for people to think about. And I like that perspective of cherishing, because when you're kind of changing your mindset, that's important. So, if you'll talk about maybe the clients that you see and what you specialize in, so people can kind of get an idea for that.
Yeah, I see a lot of pediatric clients, and you know, to your point about taking a minute to recognize this epidemic going on with childhood obesity and kind of tying that in. Evolution will make it a family plan. You know, it's not that this kid just has this weight issue. There's a family dynamic and things going on. But in terms of looking at and helping kids kind of understand, you know, our bodies don't come with a rule book, if you will. And so I always joke that, like, hey, I've read that manual, and my job is to teach you and coach you. And so I think it's less intimidating when you're bringing a child who, you know, I'm a stranger to them, and they're kind of assessing, now, what is this? Who is this? I always say, hey, you know, have you ever had a coach? And somebody that's mentored or taught you something, and they're, you know, I get the head nod, and then they typically kind of will tell me a story about it. I'm like, what did that person do? What was their role? And, you know, they'll respond back with something like, you know, they taught me something. And then, you know, and I said, you know what, that's what this is. I am Coach Stephanie, because I want to share how to make you a better person at life. This is your game, and you have one body. You're your only you. You know, no one else has ever been here like you. There will never be another you, and that's really special. And so we want to help you understand how to take care of yourself. And I always say that that's what your parents' job is too. We want to make you an independent person that thrives in this world. And part of that is understanding how to take care of yourself. And so I always say, first session, you know, is a lot of just, hey, intake. Like, tell me about yourself. What do you like to do? What do you like to eat? Because everyone's going to have a different story, and understanding where that player's skill set is really key when you develop their plan. You would have a very different coaching session with a beginner versus an intermediate and advanced. And so I think recognizing that and where that person is and the readiness to hear, you know, maybe they were dragged to that appointment and the experience in the doctor's office wasn't as encouraging, or they may have gotten scared. They have to go see another person about something. And so I think, you know, that's kind of how I like to approach it. I always say, I'm on your side. I'm going to help you figure this out. And so usually that's really the purpose of the first session, is to get to know them and understand them and their story.
So, but it's kids and adults.
Yes, I also do see adults, and with all kind of medical nutrition therapy needs, you know, anything from diabetes, heart disease. We have a lot of patients needing help managing GI disorders, and then basic nutrition of just, you know, understanding what your body needs and are you properly absorbing. You know, there's a lot of tests now. The technology is fantastic now.
I was really, I found that very interesting, with being able to utilize technology to help people with their nutrition. And it's it can be so personalized.
Yes. And that one of the tests that we like to use in our practice is Spectracell micronutrient testing. And basically it is a blood test, but it's not testing the serum levels or what's circulating at the moment. It actually harvests your white blood cells or lymphocytes and looks intracellularly. And that's really where a lot of these micronutrients, you know, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants are currently like functioning. And so you really get an understanding of your body, what you're absorbing, what you're not absorbing. And it's not just what you eat. You know, it's truly a question of, okay, what kind of genetics, what kind of maybe potential pathways, gut health, all of those things combined, and how do we replete you, and then how do we work on managing that going forward. So it truly is customized and very targeted, which we have something also called GI mapping, and that's really taking a look at not just anatomically what's happening. Obviously you can get CT scans and x-rays, but this is more looking at the bacteria, which is kind of like the forgotten organ, if you will, this whole microbiome happening, and that plays such a key role in your proper digestion, absorption, transportation of nutrients. So I love learning. I learn something almost every single day. And I also love working in a practice with other people because we learn from each other. So it truly is a blessing to get to be in this field during this time and help people who may have been dealing with something for years but just didn't have these tools and resources to figure it all out, and now we do, and it's life-changing.
Yeah. Okay.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I am going to wrap up with my final question that I always ask. And there is so much. So check out the article in Tulsa Kids Magazine. She has given so many different fun tips and recipes for kids. And so check that out this month in Tulsa Kids Magazine. But I always wrap up with, tell me what you're passionate about right now.
In life or in my career? I mean,
let's do both.
I know. Gosh, I am truly passionate about my family. That is my purpose. You know, obviously bettering myself betters them, you know, so investing in myself and finding that balance and how I contribute to my family unit and taking care of myself is obviously a piece of that. And sometimes motherhood, we sacrifice a lot, and we definitely, at the expense of giving, we have such giving hearts and nurturers, but also noticing I'm my best version when I care for myself. So I'm passionate about involving my kids with what I'm doing as well. And then in work, I would say really people are my passion. I genuinely can say that I love listening to their stories. And you know,
Same.
But also I've come to find that like people don't care what you know until they know you care. And I think building that relationship is my priority, so that they know that like I'm invested too. This is still you, but I'm on your team now. You're expanding your team, you know, and I think that's really important conversation to have with people, because they have to also have ownership into what they're doing. They, you know, really what I'm here to do is kind of get more to the root. And so, and how you do that is building rapport, building relationships. So I think that's what I love about this current work environment that I'm in. And I've worked in different settings, but it's the gift of their time and mine to really sit down and have those like truly meaningful conversations, you know? So I think that's my passion is people.
That's awesome.
And people are both of those, my family and my clients.
Yeah. That's a good way to end. I appreciate you
Yes,
being here and talking to me, and this was fun.
This is so much fun. I really appreciate it.
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap on this week's episode. I want to thank you for listening to the Sharing Passion and Purpose podcast. It means the world to me, and I'd love to connect with you. Please follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Sharing Passion and Purpose, and Twitter at Passion Sharing. Also, if you like this podcast, it would mean a lot to me for you to subscribe, rate, and review it. And as always, all my show notes will be available on my website, sharingpassionandpurpose.com.